Well, good morning, everybody, trumpet players and other guests to my channel. It's early in the morning, doing a church gig today, and as you all know, I go early to the gigs, early enough to make these videos, right? And what's interesting about this, okay, I'll try to get in the light. What's interesting about this, something you guys don't know, is that the first one of these videos that I ever did was here at this church, just like this one. Only back then I was doing them outside with a selfie stick. I would walk around the parking lot talking. Why is it that you don't know about this? Because I never posted any of those. Huh? I made these videos for about a year before I started feeling comfortable about posting them. So that's a little trivia information for you about this channel, right? Anyway, what do I want to talk to you about today? You know, in yesterday's Q&A, I talked about how I don't use the professionals. Now, this is specifically for professionals, okay? It's different for, let's say, high school students. Now, there's a similar thing for high school students, but it's not the same thing, okay? When a professional comes to me for help, it's usually because they're in trouble. Usually it's for chops. Sometimes it's because there's something I do that they want to have, that they want to get better at, but almost always it's for chops. And I don't know where I got this from, but I won't. What I mean by where I got it from, the reason I say that is the first time this came up, the first time I worked with a pro was, I think it was as early as the late 80s. It was either late 80s or like 1990, 1991. And it's the reason I say I don't know where I got this is because it's possible that this guy told me not to tell anybody. Okay? It's possible. Or I just knew better. Right? But regardless of how I got to where I am today, my attitude is, my policy is, if I'm teaching a pro, I don't advertise it. And I know that makes me a lot different. So there's a lot of teachers out there that if they're teaching a pro, the first thing they're going to do is post it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something. They're going to go have a social media post about it. Why are they going to do that? Because, hey, out of all the teachers that professional player could have taken lessons with, they chose that person, right? And hey, that's great advertising. Makes you look real good, doesn't it? But at what whose expense? Obviously at the pro's expense. So yeah, we talked about this yesterday because I had an email. I'm never going to identify. If somebody emails me with a question about their chops and they're having a horrible time with it, I will not mention that person's name. If I answer a Q&A, you know, if you email me and I answer your question in the Q&A, because that's how I'm doing it now, right? I'm trying to avoid responding to so many emails with full-fledged email responses. Instead, I want to start directing everybody to the, you know, to the Q&A session. Because that's really, looking at the best way to do this, right now, that's the best way for me to do this. Okay? Anyway, so yeah, if you say, oh, my life is falling apart, everything on the trumpet just doesn't work, I'm not going to put your name on the question. Okay? And that's been that way this whole time. Now, there have been pros who chose to bless me. That's how I see it. There are pros who chose to bless me by advertising for me. Right? They will say, I had trouble. I went and took lessons with Eddie. Eddie helped straighten me out. And then they go tell these people in town that I helped them. But that's their choice, not mine. I'm not going to take that from them. If they want to offer that to me, that's something that they do. I think it's extremely unethical. I think it's extremely unethical to benefit from somebody else's struggle. It's at vulture level. I really believe that. I think it's at vulture level to do that. You know? What is a vulture? Vulture, some animal struggling on the side of the road, fall down dead, and here come the vultures to chew on it, right? To me, that's what it's like when someone else is having difficulty, and now you are going to be the savior, and now you're gonna what do you call it? Advertise to everybody that you're so good of a teacher that even the pros are coming to you. Now, there are some pros, I've got some kudos. Now, I know one for sure. So one of the pros that's taking lessons with me is head of the music department at San Jac North. That's a community college here in town. And he's been very open about telling people about, so I don't mind sharing what he has to say. But he's the one that started it. So it's not like there are no pros that I put on my resume. I mean, not resume, what do you call that? My bio, right? My teaching bio. I'll put that because this guy offered it first. And he tells people about I get an email one day. I'm a good friend of this guy. Notice I'm not saying his name, right? Because, well, I did tell you where he works, right? See, that's just how I am. I can't do that to people. And you know what this really comes down to? This is not an issue, really. This is not an issue of, when you get deeper into it, it's not an issue of ethics. I do think it's ethically wrong to do this. But that's not the line that I've drawn, really, if you think about it. So there's a difference between ethics and morals, right? There's a big difference between ethics and morals. I shouldn't say big difference. Some people can't tell the difference, right? Right and wrong, they just think there's right and there's wrong. But there's different kinds of right and wrong. This is the philosophy part of me coming out, right? So things that are morally right and morally wrong can sometimes not necessarily be the same thing as what's ethically right and ethically wrong. And I'm more driven by the moral side. So morally, I can't betray somebody's trust like that. It's happened to me many, many times, right? And I won't go into that right now. But you know, we live in a time when people are constantly making excuses to do the wrong thing. It's almost as if the philosophy works like this. If my reason for doing the wrong thing is important enough, then it's okay. And this guy's, I consider him a good friend. But I've heard him in conversations with leaders say that the reason he's doing this wrong thing, that I consider wrong. Now, he doesn't consider it wrong because see, that's the thing, is if you've got a reason, then in this society, it's no longer wrong. Because you've got an important reason for doing the wrong thing. So therefore, it's no longer wrong. So this guy, I remember talking to a band leader, I just overhearing the conversation, just because, not eavesdropping, the conversation was happening right there in front of my face, right? Saying why he had to, and if I'm not mistaken, he had well, I'm not going to say what it was because it doesn't matter. But the reason was because he's got children to feed. And you know, the Bible, I believe that the parable of the sowers, when Jesus told the parable of the sowers, that's what he's talking about. In fact, I shouldn't even preface that with I believe. That is what that is about. There's the seed that fell on the rocks, and that seed represents the seed that fell on the rocks, and the birds or the crows or whatever it was came and ate the seed. And that's the people who hear, and Satan immediately takes it away from them. Right? Then and the other two I get kind of mixed up. There's the one where the next one is the temptations, I think. So the next seed that falls, and there's people who are tempted away from doing, anyway, so the point I'm making is that third category, that third type of seed, is the cares and worries of this world. There's people who hear the word, in other words, people who know what's right, but won't do it because of the cares and worries of this world. Right? They know what's right, but they won't do what's right because of the cares and worries of this world. Now, that parable is told in, I think, two or three different Gospels. If you look in Luke, Luke is the one where Jesus said afterwards what these different things represent, where the different seeds represent, okay? So if you want to see this in the Bible, look it up in Luke, because the other versions don't have the explanation. In Luke, Jesus told the parable, and then the apostles asked him, what does the parable mean? And he says, for them out there, it's not for them to know the meaning of the parable. But then he says, but for you, my apostles. Maybe he said disciples, but he said, for you, I'm going to tell you the meaning. And then he lays out the meaning of the parable of the sower. And that third category was the cares and worries of this world. Okay? So, what are we talking about here? I try, and I don't always get this right, by the way. So, these behind the wheel videos are not nearly as popular as my other videos. I'm not going to stop doing them though, because I get enough response from people about these videos, and even though fewer people are watching them, they're actually more important. I hope that makes sense. Because I think with these videos, we're actually tying in the stuff that matters most. Now, most people don't care. That's kind of like what we're talking about right now, right? Most people don't care about what matters most. They only care really about what they want right now. Okay? So most people don't actually care about this stuff. That's fine. This video is not for them. Right? So anyway, I try my best. I don't always get it right. I do screw up. I do the wrong thing sometimes. So sometimes if anyone were to listen to my videos and say, do you know what, Eddie, you're always talking about doing the right thing, but man, do you remember that time when you blah, 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 right? Well, I never said I was perfect. I said, this is the direction I'm going. This is the direction I'm trying to go. I don't always get it right. But this is what I believe is right, and this is where I'm trying to go in my life. Okay? So, yes, this whole thing with not revealing the name of the pros who take lessons with me for their benefit. There's no reason why you should ever, because every time you say that a pro is taking lessons with you, you damage that pro's reputation. There's no way you can get around that. Unless that pro himself goes out and says, hey, there's this thing that Eddie Lewis teaches that I was really interested in. But no, what normally happens is the guy is having horrible chop problems that may end his career. That's the only time they come to me. The pro, well, I shouldn't say only time. I exaggerate sometimes. Sorry about that. But yes, I'd say, okay, let's put a number on it. I want to say 90%, maybe 85% of the time that a pro comes to me is because their chops are falling apart and they're afraid that they're going to end their career right now. So I don't advertise, because that's the worst thing you can do to their career. People get gossiping. By the way, that is gossip. It's not called advertising if what you're doing is benefiting from somebody else's failure. That's really just gossip. And you may think you come out of it smelling pretty, but it's actually quite wrong. It's actually disgustingly wrong. So anyway, I strive to live my life according to my Christian moral values. What I consider, after having read the Bible many, many, many times, and having a complete understanding of not just the first, what do you call it? It's the first and second covenant. I understand the law and I understand grace, and I try to live my life according to what is right, not just in a legalistic sense, but in a way that fulfills Christ's love in my life. That's how I try to live. And that's what compels me not to share the names of the pros who take lessons with me. Would I benefit if I started listing all of their names? Would it wow people and help them decide, hey, I want to take lessons with you? Would I not double or even triple my student load by taking advantage of them like that? Of course I would. I would benefit, and I could be just like that other musician in town. I could say, well, I have a family to feed, and I have bills to pay, and there's hard things happening in my life, so I have to do this. I could do that, couldn't I? But I choose not to. I choose to make, theoretically, right? I say theoretically because I don't believe it actually works like this. If you're a real Christian and you believe God provides, then you don't have to worry about the money you miss out on by not doing these kinds of things, right? You see how that works. If you're a real Christian and you truly believe that God provides, people talk about that vow of poverty. Jesus never said you needed to suffer like that. The poverty that Jesus talks about, he says the yoke will be light, right? His burden is going to be light. Yes, it's a burden, and yes, we're not supposed to go. This vow of poverty means that I think people get it backwards. So I live this life of poverty because of being a Christian. So I have nothing. I don't even have food to eat. Right? So I'm exaggerating, but you get the idea. But now, because I'm in such desperate need, I have to now behave in an immoral way. Really? You got it backwards. God, when Jesus sent the people out, and he said, don't take money, don't take a second coat, don't take any of this stuff, right? Jesus sent all these people out to preach. And he asked them, this is the part everybody misses, right? He asked them, did you want for anything? In other words, was there anything you needed that you didn't get? And they said, no, everything was provided. That's the part everybody misses. So, getting back to the subject. When I choose not to boost my income by benefiting from somebody else's failure, I actually do believe that it's not that God rewards you. I used to say that. I don't think God rewards you for that. Jesus also said, it sounds like I'm preaching now. I'm at a church, right? That's not why I'm doing this. You guys know I'm preachy all the time. I hope you know that. But Jesus said this thing about, he says, does the servant come in and expect the master to say thank you for providing, for doing the work? No, that's what's expected. Jesus said that's what's expected. The servant is supposed to do the work. After the servant serves the master and has his fill, eats enough food, then the servant can sit down and eat himself. Right? I forgot why I was saying that. But, yeah, so this, to me, this is part of, and doing the right thing. So this is part of the daily struggle of living out that whole parable of the sower. Right? That's what it's called, by the way, the parable of the sower. as in sowing seed. Okay, if you want to look that up, you can look it up online. But this, what I'm talking about with this thing about not sharing the pros' names, not benefiting from who they are, this is part of the daily walk. You know, I believe, so I think a lot of people think that what it means to live a righteous life, what it means is to, well, that's why I was talking about that, because, you know, it's very, very, very important. I know this is a tangent on a tangent on a tangent. It's very important that you don't live a righteous life in order to go to heaven. That's not how that works. There's only one way to go to heaven, and you can't possibly be righteous enough to earn your way there. That's just the truth. That's how it works. But we strive to be as righteous as we can because of, I like to say it's out of love. I try to do what God says is right out of love that I have for God. That's how I see it. I love God so much, that's what I want to give him, is a righteous life. So it's not so that I get any reward for it. It's not about getting a reward, and that's what Jesus was saying. Does the master, does the servant eat before the master? Well, I can't remember exactly, but he says basically, no, that's the job the servant had. And that's how I feel about doing what's righteous. You do what's righteous, not because you're going to get a reward for it, but because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what someone who loves God does. Does it make sense? It's not for some reward. Anyway, so this is part of a daily struggle. And I believe that every day presents you with any number of decisions that you can make, forks in the road. You can either go to the left and suit yourself, or you can go to the right and live a more righteous life. And every day presents you with as many as 100 of these decisions that you make every day. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. And I guarantee you, nobody gets all of them right. Nobody lives on when you look at how many of these choices you have to make each day, nobody gets every single one of those correct. Nobody. Okay? Nobody is that righteous. But we strive for that. We strive out of love to be that way. And I do believe that this idea of not benefiting from somebody else's demise, somebody else's failure, somebody else's problems, that definitely falls in that category. And the reason I'm saying it that in such broad terms is because this is not just something that just applies to whether or not you should share your students' names, right? It's not just about that. Okay? There's a lot of stuff that you face in your life that you have to make a decision. Now, I was talking to somebody last night that flat out told me, we were having a discussion about music career, and I shared with him my opinion about some stuff, and he says, well, that's easy for you to say. But there's too many reasons for me to do it this way. He actually flat out told me this. Basically what he did was justify his reasons for doing what he clarified last night that he knew was wrong. He knew it was wrong, morally wrong. And he made that decision. He got to that fork in the road. And he said, you know what? Instead of doing what's right, I'm going to do what it will go well for me. Well, you made that decision. Okay? That's the decision he made. You know, I'm not criticizing that person. You know, I realized last night that you can't just like turn this on and off at will. Not in the major sense. You can one thing at a time. That's where this works. But I think what happens is the overwhelming nature of life's, you know, like I said, the worries and concerns of this world, right? Those worries and concerns, if you don't believe that God provides, I can see how it would be very difficult to not take what you think you deserve every single time that it's offered, or even when it's not offered, right? Take it every single moment that you get, right? If you don't believe God actually provides for you, that the divine is there for you, taking care of you in all circumstances. If you don't believe that, it must be extremely difficult. When each one of those forks in each road, I told you it can happen as many as 100 times a day. That's how I visualize it. Forks in the road. Each one of those forks in the road, it must be extremely difficult to choose the fork that goes to righteousness when you don't believe that God provides. And chances are, if you don't believe God provides, you probably don't believe either that God loves you. I'm here to say that God does provide and that God does love you. And that through Jesus Christ, you can have the strength to choose a different life for yourself. You don't have to always choose what's best for you. Okay? Well, I see the leader of, I say the leader, so in this case, he would be considered a contractor. But for most of the gigs I do with him, it's his band, and he's not just a contractor, he's also the leader of the band. So, anyway, I better get out there. God bless you guys. Thanks for sticking around for my sermon. Anyway, I just wanted to give more detail into why I won't share people's names when they, professional players' names in my lessons, okay? All right. So, anyway, God bless you. We will see you in the next video. Bye.